How to knit the Latvian braid. Hi everyone, Norman here. Today I want to show you a very beautiful way to add multicolored horizontal cables to your designs. It looks quite spectacular and complicated, but it's actually just knit and purl stitches. I'm going to show you how to work the Latvian braid flat first, and then I'm going to do it in the round in the second part of this video as well. Let's dive right into it. Essentially, the Latvian braid is nothing else but knitting 2 rows of reverse stockinette stitch and weaving in a tail, a very long tail, as you go twice. If you know how to weave in as you go, you already know how to do the Latvian braid. But before you can start with the actual braid, you need one setup row where we alternate knitting 1 stitch in the main color and 1 in a contrasting color. Start by joining in a new color any way you like and knit 1 stitch. I always do it with twist and weave. This is a super easy and smart way to join in a new color. I have a full tutorial here on my channel. I'll link it to you up in here, but you could use any other technique as well. And then pick up the old color as well. And we are going to knit 1 row in a simple fair pattern. So we're going to knit 1 in blue, 1 in the main color, and 1 in your contrasting color. 1 in your main color, 1 in your contrasting color, 1 in your main color, 1 in your contrasting color. A very simple pattern. Of course, you need to know how to do fair or any form of stranded knitting. I also have a tutorial for fair on my main YouTube channel. I'll add a link up in here in case you need to catch up. But of course you can also just knit 1 stitch in 1 color and then pick up the other color for the next one. It's actually very simple. So this is here just our setup row. And then we can turn our work around and start with the actual Latvian braid. This next row is remarkably simple as well. You just knit every stitch in the color it appears. However, you always have to pick up the yarn from either below or above. Let me show you what I mean. So my first stitch is in blue. So I'm going to knit this stitch, simple as that. And now I need to knit 1 stitch in the orange color. So what I'm doing is here are my 2 yarns and I'm picking up the yarn from below and I knit 1 stitch. Then I need to knit 1 stitch in the blue yarn, and again I'm picking up the yarn from below just to knit 1 single little stitch. Then 1 in orange, pick it up from below, and essentially this will twist the 2 yarns around each other, and you will end up with, here below you will end up with twisted yarn. But don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. It will untwist in the next round. So as long as you stick to this rule, always pick up the next color from below. And of course you need to keep both yarns in the back, as you can see. But other than that, it's just knitting across the full row and always picking up the yarn from below. And in that manner you will form the lower part of your Latvian braid. If you want later on, if you want the Latvian braid to point in the other direction, so now it's pointing in this direction. If you want to point it in the other direction, you would have to pick up the yarn from above. So knit 1 stitch and then get it from here. And in that manner, let's knit 2 more stitches here. If you do it like that, to show you the result, if you do it like that, see then the braid will point in this direction. I'm gonna unravel this part here and continue knitting in this direction. If you always alternated the two colors and you've knitted each stitch in the color it appears and always picked up the yarn from below, this will be the result. Here, this is the right side. You already can see the bottom half of your Latvian braid. And now it's time to knit in the other direction. And for that, make sure that the last stitch here wraps around, or here this color wraps around the last stitch, so you don't end up with an incomplete cable here on this side. And now we are going to purl in the other direction with yarns held in front. So I'm going to purl one stitch. And now again, I'm always going to pick up the new color from below. Always from below, pull that tight. So the only difference here is that you purl across. You need, for the Latvian braid, you need 2 rows of reverse stockinette stitch. So you need to purl across the right side. And you will notice how your little, the twist that is stored here below, here below, will slowly untwist as you purl across this row. And ideally speaking, the 2 yarns should be balanced once you reach the end of this row. See, you can already see our Latvian braid forming. It's a very, very, very simple technique. You just knit and purl and always pick up the yarn from below. Of course, if you picked up the yarn from above in the previous row, you would have to pick up the yarn from above in this row as well. And once you finished purling across in that manner, this will be the result. And from here, you can simply continue in pattern. Make sure to secure this last little bit of the braid, and then continue knitting or purling across whatever your pattern demands. So I'm gonna continue for a couple of more rows in stockinette stitch here so you can see the results. So 2 rows of stockinette stitch later, this is the result. You can see how these purl stitches here on both sides really let the Latvian braid pop. But really it's nothing else but 2 rows of reverse stockinette stitch, and this here is basically weaving in tails as you go, or rather twisting both yarns around each other to create this cable or braid-like look. Of course, you can also knit the Latvian braid in the round. So I'm gonna knit until the start of my round, and then I'm gonna pick up a new color just the way I did before and join it in. Again, join it in any way you like. You don't really have to do it with twist and weave the way I do it. I just really love this technique. And besides, it also knits the very first stitch. And then again, pick up both colors and knit across one row in the out technique, always alternating between each color. One stitch in blue and then one in orange, or whatever colors you picked. Make sure to maintain a nice and even tension. Don't mess up here the floats as you bridge the gaps. That's kind of very easy to happen, so try to avoid doing that. And then here, once you finished this round, I'm gonna remove the stitch marker, slip one stitch, and place the stitch marker one more time. And from here you need to bring both yarns to the front. And now we will play the same game as before. So you always pick up the yarn from one side. We are gonna do from above now, and then you purl one stitch. But you could also pick up from below. I'm just gonna do above here because that's what we didn't do before. And you purl across the whole row. Remember, the Latvian braid is based on reverse stockinette stitch, so all you need to do in addition, you need to twist these yarns as you go. But again, if you want the braid to point in the other direction, then pick up from below instead of above. It doesn't matter as long as you are consistent. And as you can see, with double pointed knitting needles, it is a tiny bit fiddly. Sorry, it's a tiny bit fiddly. So fixed circulars is probably the easiest, then magic loop, and then of course double pointed knitting needles. And in that manner, continue knitting across the whole round. So here I am at the very end of my row. And now you can decide to remove the stitch marker again. Now bring up this yarn here from below, but now you need to slip this stitch here, this stitch here, replace that marker here, and then bring both yarns to the front. A little bit crazy. And now you need to do the exact same in the opposite direction. So before I picked up from below, and now I'm gonna pick up from above. Now I'm gonna pick up from above and purl across. So pick up from below. So that's the only difference between knitting the Latvian braid in the round and flat versus flat. When you're knitting flat, you switch between a knit and a purl round, whereas when you knit in the round, you don't switch between, you purl across both rounds. However, you switch the way you pick up stitches. So before it was from above, now I do from below, and that's the only difference. Now here at the end of the row, oops, there is a little knot in my skein. Always a pleasure when this happens. Normally I would have to retrace my steps and join in the yarn properly, but I'm gonna ignore that for now. Now you can slip the marker, bring both yarns to the back, slip that stitch, and continue knitting in the main color, or you could also continue knitting in the contrasting color. Doesn't really matter. Typically you frame the Latvian braid with the same color on both sides, but anyway, that's how to do it in the round. It's super simple as well. And I'm gonna knit across 2 more rounds to show you the results. Now 2 rows later, this is the result. Super pretty. However, you might notice that here, despite all care, you can still sort of notice the jog. There are two things you can try. First of all, I slip the first stitch of every round. Some people try the method where you avoid a jog by lifting the stitch of the previous row back to the knitting needle and knitting it together with the current row. I'll link you a tutorial up in here. I personally actually prefer slipping stitches when it comes to purl stitches, but that just might be a preference. However, what you can always do is you can sort of hide the fact using the jog with the tail. So simply thread the tail on a tapestry needle and then see this purl stitch here. So all these strand exits from a purl stitch, well here this one isn't. So we're gonna get out here from above here, that purl stitch, go through that little hole here and then exit here through the same hole, and then it will just look as if you covered that up, and then things will look much neater. Of course, then you need to weave in the tail on the wrong side, and if the way things look up in here bother you a little bit, well, then use the other side of the tail to cover that up in a similar manner. Anyway, that's how to knit the Latvian braid. Please like this video if you enjoyed watching, comment with your questions, and of course, don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss any new videos. Happy knitting and enjoy the rest of your day.